Welcome, Poindexter.
And good morning. Many of us think about long-term care in our youth, but few of us act. That's why many elderly people find themselves without adequate protection, knowledge of what's available to them, and the wherewithal to pay. In this half hour, you will get some excellent advice, whether you're the type person who plans ahead or not. Our first guest is Holly Lang, Deputy Director of the Philadelphia Corporation for Aging. Our second guest is Steve Feldman, a lawyer whose practice includes such important documents as the power of attorney and living wills. Camille McDonald, our third guest, represents the Philadelphia chapter of the American Association of University Women. And I must ask you immediately, Camille, how the association became involved in this critical issue.
Well, first of all, I think I'd like to introduce the American Association of University Women.
Thinking well ahead is vitally important. This is your area of expertise, Stephen.
That's right. If an individual fails to plan ahead, then the options which may have been available to that individual early on will have been lost. If an individual, as a result of incapacity, which ends up requiring long-term care, individuals lose the ability to make decisions for themselves, to manage their resources, to plan for paying for long-term care. However, if an individual plans ahead, then they can increase the opportunity that they have to retain control over decision-making and also to increase the options for paying for care.
Let's make this understandable. Plan ahead in what way? Give me an example.
Well, incapacity affects an individual's ability to manage their assets, to make decisions about...
handle their money.
Exactly. To make decisions about what kind of health care they need, how they're going to pay for health care. By planning ahead, individuals can not only identify an individual to make those decisions for them if they are unable, but also what types of decisions have to be made based upon their own preferences. Living wills, for example, identify the kinds of decisions that an individual wants to have. I don't want long-term care. I don't want to be kept alive artificially on a respirator or a ventilator. By having a living will, you are able to control those decisions.
Is that living will recognized in Pennsylvania?
Well, at this time, there's no living will legislation that exists in Pennsylvania. However, there has been a recent U.S. Supreme Court case which recognizes the right of an individual to decide whether they want to refuse medical care or not.
Artificial support.
Correct. And therefore, every individual has this constitutional right to decide for themselves, while they are competent, what kind of health care that they want. Pennsylvania has had 2 cases that have arisen which recognize the rights of incapacitated individuals to refuse medical treatment and care. So even though Pennsylvania doesn't have a statute per se, nevertheless, I believe a living will be honored in many cases.
Holly, can you paint a picture of how serious the situation is with regard to people who fail? Stephen, that's your area of expertise. From a lawyer's standpoint, how should we handle our money?
Well, in the context of long-term care, it is extremely expensive. The average cost of care today in a decent nursing facility can run anywhere from $36,000 to $45,000 per year. Obviously, if an individual does not have a lot of money, they're going to run through that money very quickly. This problem is further compounded if the individual who needs long-term care is married. What happens to the spouse? It is extremely important to plan ahead for these possibilities. While Holly pointed out earlier, long-term care is not inevitable. It is certainly, the need for long-term care is foreseeable because as we get older, the possibility of becoming incapacitated increases. So it's important to look into various insurance products which do pay for long-term care. Medicare today and a Medicare coinsurance does not pay for long-term care. It does pay for nursing care, but not for a long period of time. Exactly. So by looking into long-term care insurance, which does pay for this care, we can help preserve and protect resources that can be utilized for spouse or other family members.
How expensive is it?
Well, it can be very expensive. The longer you wait to buy long-term care, the more expensive it is. If you look into a long-term care insurance product when you're in your late 50s and early 60s, it can be quite reasonable, anywhere from $600 to $800 per year. Of course, if you wait a lot longer and you're 78 years old, it gets a lot more expensive at age 70. So at around 78 years old, you're going to be paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,800 to $2,400, depending upon how much coverage you really need or want to have.
And short of that, of course, we look to the family. We think about staying home and having our loved ones cared for us. Hopefully, someone will be around to do that. Holly,
households with long-term care services in one form or another. Well, 20% of Philadelphia population, that's 400,000 people who are elderly in Philadelphia. And while I think it is, there are some services for some individuals to remain in the community, I would say that services for most individuals are, simply unavailable. There are long waiting lists, and family members are the key to care at home at this time. And if an individual does not have a family member or some other caregiver who is available to coordinate and to ensure that services are provided, an individual without such kind of support is simply unable to be able to remain at home at this time.
90-year-old woman with glaucoma, limited vision, peripheral vision, 5% of one eye. What can be done for her, Holly? Anything?
Manner. Most
summarize what is available or how a person goes about getting a power of attorney.
Well, first let me describe what a power of attorney is. It is a document which appoints another person to act on your own behalf, so that you have somebody who will be there, who will be able to make decisions and act on your behalf in a legally binding manner. Most attorneys can prepare a durable power of attorney, and I want to emphasize the word durable because powers of attorney cease to be effective when an individual becomes incapacitated or incompetent. A durable power of attorney will survive such an incapacity, so therefore it will remain in effect. As I pointed out, most attorneys will be able to draft a durable power of attorney.
It's not an expensive proposition.
It's not an expensive proposition, and Philadelphia happens to be very fortunate in having a wide array of legal services which are available to the very poor, to those who are a lot more affluent, and anybody should be able to either obtain a durable power of attorney through free legal services which are readily available in Philadelphia or through the Bar Association and its members.
We'll be back after this time out.